All right, so let's dive into Solana today. A lot of big news happening around Visa, what this partnership and or association might mean for Solana's future, but more importantly, how payments may be affected worldwide with Visa and Solana playing into this. It's going to be a good one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. We'll get into a full lineup here. Part of this you've probably seen here on our show before. In fact, if you go to our YouTube channel, you're going to see a few things here. We did a full-on video right there with Visa ends Ethereum gas fees, Coinbase surpasses Bitcoin. We've done that. The point is we've been reporting on this for quite some time, seeing some of the advancements that Visa has been able to make. Obviously, one of the biggest leaders in the financial sector in terms of credit card payments. But I think this is a little bit of a different story. I want to break into a few points here. I want to go right to the press release. And this is Visa expanding stablecoin settlement capabilities to merchant acquirers, and I'll explain what that means here in a second. Visa is expanding its stablecoin settlement all to the high-performing Solana blockchain and is working with merchant acquirers WorldPay and Nuvei. This is a big deal because it gets into the overall structure of how Visa translates from an actual consumer using a credit card all the way to the merchant that is being paid. So further in the data here, it says through live pilots, issuers, and acquirers, Visa has already moved millions of USDC between its partners over the Solana and Ethereum blockchain networks to settle fiat-denominated payments authorized over VisaNet. So big deal. Further down in the press release, the Circle account that they have, Visa can now manage settlement payouts in USDC to WorldPay and Nuvei, who can now then route these payments in USDC to their end merchants. Another big advantage here. As Visa looked to expand its capability to additional clients, there's also been a significant demand to leverage newer, high-performance blockchains that can send and receive stablecoins with higher speed and lower costs. What does that sound like? Sounds like Solana. And then, of course, they go on and says this makes Visa one of the first major payment companies at scale to directly utilize Solana for live settlement payments between its clients. So this is a big news for Solana. Obviously, Solana moving up a little bit on the chart today, where most of the market is down. Last up on their point was Block Explorer SolScan numbers include real TPS, excluding voting TPS. I'll explain that in a little bit. We'll get into some of that detail. There was a couple other points to make here is that Visa controls a lot of the credit card networks when you look out there in the system. And the consistency that they've been able to hold in terms of the dominance has been pretty significant, 52.6% right there against their nearest competitor at MasterCard, and then even Amex and Discover kind of coming into play. So the reason I say that is because this has a major impact on the overall cost for Visa's infrastructure. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. If you're a business, if you're a publicly traded company, and you're out there and you have a new solution, a new technology that starts to reduce cost in a big way to you, it's really your fiduciary responsibility as either the business owner or the CEO to start to look into these things. This is a big deal. I think this will also be interesting to look at how this connects between the future of payments and the consumer side of this, which we'll talk about here in a second. Here was Kai Sheffield, who's one of the Visa guys over there that's really breaking it down. One of the things that they showcase here says, still early days, but Visa has already settled millions of dollars in USDC. We talked about that earlier, but this is kind of the framework of what it looks like. And when you look at this, it goes out from the consumer in through the issuer, typical. You'll notice over there on the left side, you've got bank wire, which is typically the route that it's going, which costs money. And then you've got Ethereum and Solana that now starts to reduce that infrastructure cost in both in and out, which goes over to the acquirer. So again, getting back in, and of course, eventually that flows out all the way into the merchant, which is a big deal because when that starts to reduce cost, then this starts to change the game for payment systems globally. Obviously, Visa kind of controlling the market out there, so this would be a big, big advantage. I'm surprised Solana isn't moving up even more so. Obviously, we've got a lot of pressure on the markets right now, but Solana, of course, making its way up the charts a little bit. If you look at a couple of things here on the stablecoin dashboard on SolScan, you'll notice that USDT is not near as evident here as USDC. And typically that has been kind of the thing. So again, this is just another big advantage of USDC making a major play into the major finance networks. And this, I think, is one of the bigger things to watch, especially as Visa jumps into this, because the likelihood is we're going to see more and more of these payment networks doing the same exact thing, and that is figuring out a model in which they could come into this. All right, so in real-time transactions, you can kind of see it happening right here. Again, this is over on Explorer for Solana. So this is showing that the tool set is at work, and obviously Solana being well used within the ecosystem in terms of payment architecture. A couple other aspects to look at here. These are transactions per second and the success rate. TPS is growing, so this is something that we've anticipated. This, I think, is in the very, very early stages. We are going to see an absolute explosion of TPS once we start to see the kind of implementation of these networks really kind of come to fruit. Now, this is going to be an advantage, I think, for the marketplace that a lot of people are probably not necessarily anticipating. The other thing that plays into it, these are the non-vote and the vote transactions. Remember we were talking about earlier in that press release of the voting transactions and the non-vote transactions. Obviously, the voting transactions are growing right now, but again, I think this will be, a scenario that plays in time that will showcase how these companies will really start to utilize blockchains like Solana to really further kind of the definition of what they're doing in terms of their payment architecture. A couple of clips I want to get to. This first one is getting into Kai Sheffield, the guy with Visa, talking a little bit more around the crypto test. Listen in.
Companies like Crypto.com, they're saying, wait a minute, we're holding some of our corporate treasury in USDC. We pay some of our employees in USDC. Like, consumers are spending from a balance of crypto or USDC. Why do we have to convert that back into traditional fiat in a bank account just to be able to settle the obligations that we have with Visa? And today, we can't receive USDC from one of our clients to a traditional bank because traditional banks don't support USDC. They're not plugged into public blockchains. And so now we have an account at Anchorage where we have an Ethereum address that we can provide to a client. And we could say, instead of having to send us a bank wire, to our existing bank account and paying us in dollars, you can pay us in dollars in the form of USDC that you can send over the public Ethereum blockchain to the account that we have with Anchorage. There's going to be a long transitionary period. I think a lot of people think in these binaries of like, you live in a world of just traditional fiat bank accounts, or you go completely crypto and like everything is in USDC on public networks. For as long as we can see, there will be traditional fiat and there will be digital fiat.
All right, so this came over from the Bankless Show, so shout out to the guys over there on that interview with Kai. The cool thing here is that he's referencing this whole payment infrastructure. There are problems within it that I think will take some, payments really are kind of at a 2.5 level right now before we see Web3 really take off. And he is exactly right. There's going to be both. I think a lot of people will have both a crypto wallet and a traditional banking wallet. What's going to be interesting to me is, one, how the IRS is going to continue to maneuver in it, because that's one of the biggest situations that I think falls into this, is that the traceability of these things are going to be very troublesome unless you've got companies out there that are able to track this. And I think Visa will be one of them, but there's others that I think we're going to be getting into. Payroll, I think, is another one that I think eventually we'll move into it. I'll show you a couple things here. I want to jump into also what Kai was talking about, NFTs. Listen to it.
Now we see NFTs as this, really brand new phase of commerce where it's a digital storefront and it's an entirely digital product that you're selling. And we think that the potential that this has to just increase the velocity of commerce is tremendous. When you can sell something to someone across the world and have it minted instead of produced in a physical factory, and then have it delivered to a crypto address instead of shipped to a mailing address, and have that happen instantaneously, and then have whoever receives it be able to own it and resell it if they'd like to someone else all across the world. The number of transactions and the amount of commerce that can happen, we think could be, beyond anything that we've ever seen before.
Okay, so I just want to make a point here. That is one of the leads at Visa saying this. So the reality is coming to a scenario with Visa where they see the future. And when you look at Ethereum, you look at Solana, the potential of what Web3 has to hold in the future, I think we're really at a very interesting forefront of innovation happening right now. And part of this is still the old guard holding on to traditional banking, traditional politics, traditional everything. And then you have this new guard coming in. And it happens with cycles all the time in terms of demographics. The difference now is that there had never really been a monetary system that separated like that. And now we have that. And I think he's exactly right, is that the opportunity is going to be absolutely unbelievable here in the future. And I think a lot of the emerging demographics and some of the demographics out there that just are very native digital or technology wise, they're going to be able to accept what's happening and really take advantage of it in the near future. Let's go over to a clip here by Jeremy Allaire from Circle around the use case of Solana and USDC. Listen in.
Why the plateau? Is that just kind of normal market stuff? Or do you feel as though there are specific use cases that Solana developers should be working on to really help, that would really help grow that number? Right now, I think USDC has double the amount that Tether does. It's the most used stablecoin on the network. But what does it need to really go from, 2.5 billion to closer to what it does on, say, Ethereum?
And so I think just, continuing to focus on building quality experiences, building high performance experiences, and, doing things that aren't possible in other places. I mean, I think having central limit order books, for example, as a composable unit opens up all these other applications that people can build on top of. I mean, one of the apps that I'm really excited about seeing get built out and launched is like Star Atlas, which is a game, but it has a marketplace for in-game items, and it has a lot going on. So there's a lot of different things in that project. But yeah, they're able to take the Serum protocol and weave that into their game marketplace, and that's pretty powerful when you start to see these things kind of mixed together.
So I think Allaire also is very savvy on where the future is going, and I think this is one of the things when you have major corporations like Circle and what's happening with Visa, then you layer in some of this technology like what Solana has been able to achieve. All the pieces of the puzzle start to come together, and that's when you see major innovation and advancement. It's happened before in the era of the internet, mobile, social, all those cycles of tech adoption for society happened because of companies that started to realize, hey, there's some better ways out there. An example of that is what Superfluid is doing here. So they are a company that essentially are going to be doing streaming payments. And just to show you a little bit about what they're up to, this is how they're looking at streaming real-time payments in from users directly into your business, and it's happening right now. Now, this is very early, and we'll most likely see a lot of other companies that are going to be able to do this in the future. Obviously, blockchain, especially blockchains like Solana, make a big opportunity for this to happen. Further into this is CopperX. All right, so I'm going to play this for you, just an example, but they're using Superfluid to essentially transact like this. And again, this gets right back into the idea around not only Solana, but also within the ETH ecosystem that plays into this. So again, very, very big opportunity here for streaming payments and what that might look like. And what really starts to go into an opportunity is getting into the idea of payroll. And payroll is a big problem because right now there's really only one way to do it. But when you have such a global population, people all over the world, you've got issues from one country to the next in terms of the value and the denominations. All that plays into nothing when it comes to crypto. And I think that's a big advantage of companies that are able to kind of leap forward into that next layer. I want to play a clip here from them to kind of talk a little bit more about what CopperX is doing. Listen in.
Introducing recurring billing, powered by Superfluid. Enabling recurring billing is as easy as adding 7 lines of code to your website or app. With just one click, they can start their subscription and begin enjoying your services. Plus, throughout the process, we offer tips and information on Superfluid and token streaming, so they can learn more about our technology. We automatically send you and your customer transaction receipts and invoices at the end of each month, so you don't have to worry about tracking payments or subscriptions manually. We'll take care of low balance or insufficient funds notifications, letting you and your customer know the status of their account. They can easily top up their balance to continue using your service, or you can limit their access as needed.
Now, you guys probably recognize that. If you're a business owner, you're probably looking at that and go, Paul, that looks kind of like Stripe, and exactly what Stripe has been able to do with subscriptions. The other thing about that is it starts to play into what the potential is for payroll, ideas around that I think will kind of change the game as well. Now, there are still a lot of things that have to be done. Don't think that this is just going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. But the cool aspect here is that it does start the process. And that to me is the most important thing anytime you see major innovation. I want to jump to another clip here on Solana's loyalty point tokens, because this is going to also change the way that Solana is being used at retail. Listen in.
This is the Solana Pay loyalty program flow. They start by clicking the Start Program button, at which point the merchant is creating basically a token for their customer. After a couple seconds, you see that the token has indeed been created by the merchant. The store is points, and you see that right now the points back is 1%. Later on, you can update it to 10%, let's say. Now, when a customer goes to check out from your Shopify store, you see that they're getting 10% of the points back. Once a person has accumulated enough points, they can actually check out using points instead of paying with Solana. Points are burned instead of actual Solana, and the payment is confirmed.
That's a big deal for retail, and I think when you look at how retail are implementing a lot of new technologies, remember retail really just made a shift about 6-7 years ago to implementing a lot of these new iPad, Stripe enabled, things like Square, etc., that changed the floor plan of how a retailer actually does point of sale. And point of sale was always plugged into these kind of bolt-on companies that did loyalty. Now, this I think is all going to be dismantled for retail in the future. You're going to see payment and loyalty all in one place. Imagine if you had Stripe that also had a loyalty integration, but you're also going to see that all flowing into a wallet and the ability to go direct to consumer, which to me, and also direct to retailer, to me is the bigger advantage here, which starts to eliminate the need for merchant processors. That's the interesting thing here, because all of this really does start to look like almost a Trojan horse for networks like Visa. Last couple of things here. This was Anatoly talking about if you're stacking ETH, now you can stack it on Solana. A couple of points here just to show you as an example. You're paying 10K in USDC. That's what you're getting in ETH, which was about 10,011 bucks. So it's actually cheaper when you go that route. And of course, right there again, USDC to ETH, right there, you can kind of see the difference right here in terms of the fees that actually are charged up against this. So again, this is just another scenario that plays into a positive solution for what Solana is doing. When you look at payment, you look at the potential of direct to retail payments, which I think is going to be the real future of Solana. Then you look at all these, these different kinds of innovations and companies that are really kind of coming up with really cool solutions, whether it's CopperX or others that will start to really solve problems. And I think that's the question that a lot of people ask me a lot. Paul, what is the first thing that this solves? It solves a lot of these problems that are existing today in the old architecture of how finance is done, which is slow and costly. Those are the two things it solves more than anything. Here was Toli's tweet right here. I want Solana to be so cheap that it saves Visa money to use it over its own in-house infrastructure, and I want Solana to be so fast that it improves the user experience as well. I think it's already moving very quickly to that phase. Obviously, there's a lot that still has to happen around FireDancer and what that future might mean for Solana. Remember, these are early days. A lot of this stuff is happening. One of the things that was kind of interesting in that same thread on this tweet right here, if Visa is going to replace their entire 1,500 TP, that's how many transactions per second they do of activity, best option would be to fork it, Solana, and then have their own little Solana Visa scenario. Tolu says why? It's cheaper to use the mainnet, completely covering 100% of the fees for users running your own servers because of the mainnet server, costs spread between the use cases. So that's the advantage. And a lot of people have kind of argued back and forth. The point is that the way Solana has been created is the mainnet is really the cost savings. So it behooves them to stay on the mainnet, which centralizes and decentralizes the potential of what Solana means. Now, I know a lot of this for many of you would say, Paul, this is just so geeky. It's just, there's too much on here. It really boils down to simple things. And that is there's going to be a new structure of how payments are done. It's going to be cheaper for the companies that are implementing it. And eventually it's going to be cheaper for the merchants, which means it's going to be cheaper for you. If you're a retail person or even if you're a business owner, this is all going to affect you in the next 18 months to 36 months in a very, very big way. These companies are moving fast. So just pay attention out there. There's a lot happening. Watch the projects like Solana and others that are flanking with this and they're doing the right things. Be very, very cautious about some of these projects out there who claim to be doing things but aren't actually implementing. They're just usually a lot of press releases. These are actual tool sets that are being implemented out there today. So kudos to Solana and kudos to Visa, I think, for making a big step in the right direction. All right, if you guys are not part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and jump in right now. It's very easy. Click the link down below. It's super simple and it's cheap. You know, it's free. You can get additional content over there and more material from us that we don't publish here on YouTube. Of course, if you want to follow me, it's out there on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.